Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to start off with a brief statement of what we believe their burden was. I'll tell you why they didn't start it, and I'll go on to prove that clearly by identifying clear thematic clashes between the two sides of the house, and showing you through rebuttals that will be integrated into the thematic clashes, why we win every clash that is on the point. Right? First of all, the burden on this side of the house was to show us clearly why our method would not work on a principal level to discourage drug use, which of course is our main objective. Right? The main categorization that we gave before I get into my clashes was on drugs. We told you that they're bad, they're harmful, these are hard drugs. One overdose of cocaine or heroin can kill you, and that's medically established fact. Therefore, we said that the government should discourage this activity. And we said that the right to health, which is a primary right, is what the government must take specific steps to protect, guarantee, and promote amongst all its citizens. And that takes primacy in this regard. Therefore, we come to our first clash on this issue, which is the influence that these people might have on people. We say that they affect people. We say that because these are famous people who are clearly in the public eye at all times, they have a responsibility to maintain their image. Their mandate is greater than other people who simply are not as well known. Because these people are in the public eye at all times, and their reputation leads to a point at which what they do can clearly be seen by others and influence other people's actions. Now, they admitted in that first speech that they do have a public image, that people do like them, right? People do admire them. Therefore, what people see, what they like and what they admire can clearly influence their behavior. We say here that there is an overriding social concern of protecting health and life, and that is sufficient to supersede the right to being awarded. Now, what they mischaracterize here, they keep saying that the right to expression is being compromised. Ladies and gentlemen, the right to expression is not being compromised. All we are compromising is the right to being recognized for that expression. We are clearly stipulating a very minimal harm in our system, and we are showing a great positive benefit from our system because we are achieving the overwhelming social burden. Their burden was to show us why the right to be recognized in and of itself is large enough to supersede the overwhelming social concern, and that is simply what they have not done. They keep mischaracterizing what we have said as saying you can't act in movies in this way, you can't do this in real life. No, we've said you cannot be recognized in an award ceremony because you've done these things, and that is the burden upon them to show why that right being subrogated is large enough to supersede the overwhelming large social concern of right to health and right to life indeed. And that brings me to my next major flag, which is the need for this act. We said we have to discourage the activity of taking drugs. That is absolutely accepted by everyone, right? What we have to do here is reduce people's co-perception that this is an acceptable and hip lifestyle choice. That is exactly the kind of image that these celebrities are broadcasting to these people, and that is the kind of image that we want to prevent from happening. They keep on coming here and saying that the award criteria should be artistic only because the action is artistic and therefore the award for it should be artistic. Yes, on a purely principle level, considering it on itself, this might appear to be a valid stance. However, ladies and gentlemen, we must remember that an award never stands by itself and in itself. No award is an island. The influence of that award extends beyond the nominees because it leads to a personal and public endorsement of that person's personal activities, of what that person does in real life, of how the way that person leads his life in every regard. Because an award given to a person is basically an endorsement of his life in every regard. A person getting a song for, let's say, being the best singer in the year on the Grammys, or Laureus Award for Best Athlete, is essentially a recognition of his entire character, and he is celebrated for that. Therefore, the image that is broadcast to the public is everything that these people are doing is not only acceptable, but will be rewarded by society at large. And that is the image that we must prevent on taking. That is the image that we must prevent to protect the greater right to life and health that we have to go on in these regards, right? What we have told you essentially is that the award has greater meaning than simply the tag it has of being a best song or a best movie or best actor, or the best athlete. It has a clear indication of recognition, and it promotes the winner's image as a clear role model, right? What they keep on telling us here is that this has no connection whatsoever to how people behave. And our second speaker came up and said, look, I listen to Eminem all the time, and I don't want to kill my mother. That's wonderful. Maybe you don't, but other people very well might. And the point here is, anything that creates a tendency to cause an overwhelming social harm, when here the harm of our system is merely subrogating the minor right to recognition for expression, not expression itself. The harms of our system are minimal, and the benefits we are proposing are overwhelmingly large. And if you are not influenced by that song, that's wonderful for you. You, however, cannot speak for everyone else who are simple ad hominem. That simply cannot be done. Everyone is influenced by different things. And if a person is in the public eye, the likelihood of him influencing others is far greater than anyone else who is not in the public eye. Basic principles, and that's exactly what we laid down. They mischaracterized it, right? They kept saying that we are evaluating social norms. Ladies and gentlemen, no, we're not. We're evaluating hard drugs. We're evaluating the right to life and health. We're evaluating scientific fact, right? We told you that drugs can kill you at one go. What they said was, look, later on, we might say gay sex is bad, and therefore you can't show gay sex because we're going to give awards for gay sex. Ladies and gentlemen, no one can ever scientifically prove that having gay sex once can kill you, right? But we can prove that taking a hard drug once can kill you. And that is the basis on which we do this. We are not evaluating social norms. We are evaluating the right to life and health and the primacy of that right. And the influence, the adverse influence that this can have on us. Sit down, please. Alright? What we are saying here is that if they see an athlete or an actor, whoever else, who's snorting coke, who's rolling with girls, who's getting awards, that is the identity, the only identity that is portrayed to the people. That is what the people see, and that is what they think is amazing and cool, and that is what they imitate. It is indeed true that an athlete is not just a drug taker, right? But that's what the people see. The people don't see them at home. There aren't cameras in the person's home which show him watching TV with his kids. A person watches on TV what a person does in his life, which is broadcast, which means if he's taking drugs and nothing else is shown about him, that is the image that the viewer gets. And that is the problem with this. Because finally, our final flash is the message this broadcast gives to the people, which is basically we're saying this: if these people are allowed to do this, we are promoting this as a viable life choice. On the other hand, our system is saying that these celebrities will be ostracized by their own communities and denied the equal right to acknowledgement for their work. Therefore, it is a disincentive for the use and glorification of these drugs. It will affect people and celebrities, and it will create positive tendencies in both stakeholders in this regard, as we have told you repeatedly through both speeches. The hippie movement, ladies and gentlemen, took up drugs because their role models and idols were taking drugs up on stage. There is a clear nexus of influence, and that is what they simply are denying in all states. We say that if they see the artist community being ostracized, that will give a clear message. We are preventing a cascading effect by legitimizing the action, because that is exactly what will happen if we do this, which will of course lead to legalizing. They talk about banning movies. If you want to ban them, fine, but we need resources, political will, and public will. And this is an essential first step towards this. And that is what we've done with them throughout, and that is why we are very proud.
Most thanks are Rupert, Cauldron, and Award.
Ladies and gentlemen, we accept the dichotomy given by the government team. That is, this is a debate about balancing rights. They want to limit the right to receive an award when there is a clear harm to society. We accept that. What we don't accept is that they have shown this clear right to society. And we say that we don't want them to reduce this and say, oh, it's just about receiving an award, just about receiving an award, for two reasons. One, we think that award is still an adjudication of that artist's right to expression. It's still connected to that person's ability to do his job, recognition for him and or her as an artist. But also, we think it's contradictory to most of the argumentation about where that connection lies. speaker talks about you rolling with girls, looking rich and all that stuff, that's not connected to that award. That's connected to that artist as a human being, to the music, to the things. Those are the real things that influence society, the bulk of NC speech, which we don't think was responded to. So I'm going to ask two questions in today's debate. The first question, which is going to take up a bulk of my time, is this notion of where is the harm. If they cannot show this clear harm linked to the award, then we say they have no right to remove that, and in fact, we say it creates for the damage. And secondly, I'm going to say, what is the responsibility of the celebrity? Going back to some of the things that Tate was talking about at the start of the speech. Under this notion of where's the harm, I'm firstly going to look at the universal harm of drugs, and second, this thing about influence and whether or not it influences other people. Is there a universal harm on drugs? We say it's disputed. We say disputes do exist. In countries like America, there are big open debates. We're not going to accept that around the world, everyone ultimately and comprehensively says that it is, that harms that these drugs are harmful. Towards the end, the speaker goes like, well, on some situations, take this very extreme position. 1 dose of cocaine will kill you. Personal experience tells me that it won't. But we say that more than that, listening to taking 1 dose of cocaine will not kill you. Right? Like if it even gets you high, I may listen to more of it. I wish that's how it worked, but it doesn't. People can live within this duality, and in fact, that's what we like. I like to feel like a gangster rapper because I'm not a gangster rapper. I want to feel like a PRMP because I'm not actually a PRMP. Right? I'm never going to do those things in real life, but I want to be able to live within the fantasy of it in my mind, and I want those thoughts not to be subjugated and oppressed and say that it's disgusting and immoral, because that's what you're going to do to the fans of that artist by saying you are not of sufficient moral character. Okay, so on the notion of the universal harm of drugs, we completely dispute it, but then we say also that it does not necessarily make them do those things. So looking to them on a few other levels. Firstly, he says, look, on this idea of this, whether or not the image of that artist is what influences other people. Tate said, you're looking at them from a very one-dimensional perspective, right? They said, oh, is the part about it, that's what people see, he said. People only see that one dimension of that artist. We say, that's not true. With modern media and things like that, you actually do go into people's houses. You can distinct that Snoop Dogg's a family man. He takes his kids out, right? He treats them like grown-up individuals. I think that's great. That's how I want to treat my kids. But more than that, that's another contradiction. If they say that people are not able to understand the character of these artists, then how do those awards then become an award based on that character? That's not fair to those artists, but neither does that give those awards any real value. You're expecting people to take that as an adjudication of their character from someone whose character I have had no opportunity to observe. Yes, sir?
So in the overwhelming majority of cases, tell us clearly how the public is able to distinguish between character and actor, as you put it. In the majority of cases, not the one example that you give of cameras at home.
I've given more than one example, I think, of cameras at home. The people can distinguish these things, firstly, because they know that I am not that artist, and we have differences between me, myself, and that artist, right? They distinguish the things, and that's what people want. We celebrate individuals who are different than us, but who share some ideas than us. And we can recognize and celebrate those ideas, even though I'm not going to end up doing those things. So let's move on to a couple other things. Whether or not then the award is a recognition of character, an idea that was discussed largely in the third speaker's speech. We say that's nonsense. We say if that's true, then why do you have very specific categories for different technical aspects of the performance or the play? And if that's true, then just give the most moral actor or actress award, right? Then that will recognize the character of that person. We think that should be a wonderful idea. But even if you say that it is a recognition, then we say that confuses people. That's what Tate and NC were both talking about. That reduces the credibility of those awards. That pushes people away from it. They say, no, MTV has no role in my life because that artist is obviously the best artist, but they're not recognizing that person. I'm not going to pay any attention to them anymore, right? Now, furthermore, so we talked about how there is no influence on behavior, so on and so forth. All NC's contribution about how this creates a more rebellious nature and how this actually attracts people towards following a certain person was completely ignored, and we think that's very irresponsible. But furthermore, we said even if in some situations someone says, I beat my wife because Eminem said, he beats his wife, and I thought that was cool, we think that's still not Eminem's fault. That is the fault of that individual. Right? There's some people out there who could be a little bit crazy, but it's not the responsibility of the person who says, the artist who expresses those ideas. It is the responsibility of the person who absorbs those ideas. Because otherwise then, we cannot hold that person responsible, we cannot put that person in jail, and we think that's fundamentally wrong, ladies and gentlemen. So, at the end of this section of my speech, We believe we've shown quite comprehensively that there is no clear harm to society. There's no clear harm when it comes to whether or not drugs give you that harm. There's no clear harm to whether or not there's a connection between what these artists do. And if anything, it is the non-award aspects of the artist's life that influence other individuals. Given those things, then what is the responsibility of the artists? How should people then behave? We think this is what we said in Science House, which was completely ignored. There's a freedom of expression. It is about art, our life imitating art rather than the reverse. If I live within those communities, if I want to talk about the ideas and I express them, if I used to be a drug dealer, ladies and gentlemen, and I talk about how that impacted my life, we think I should be allowed to do that. It stifles the message of these artists if you say I'm not going to nominate you just because you talk about things that are important to yourself and to your community. We think this is a direct infringement of that individual's ultimate God-given right, ladies and gentlemen. But more than that, it affects his right to progress in employment. It affects his right to be recognized as an individual, to contribute to his community, and we think that's wrong. We talked about how this then feeds into the debate that is ongoing. We never took a clear position on drugs. We never said it should be good or it should be bad. But we said if people are talking about it, then these individuals deserve to talk about those things too. We talked about how this will affect the credibility of that organization, how it will create the slippery slope, how the organization must resonate with the public. Lastly but not least, NC spent a lot of time talking about his personal experiences with drugs and masturbation and how people support this, well, not the masturbation part, but he wanted to, he really wanted to. How people support artists who don't get awards, sometimes because they don't get awards, because they were rejected from those ideas. He talked about the culture of rebellion and talked about indie music. At the end of this debate, this is not just a debate specifically about awards. It's about how we recognize ideas. It's about the things that influences the people we look up to. And we think what we should celebrate is the right of those individuals to talk about things that's important to them, because it's a right that we all celebrate.
Okay, the House thanks Animal very much. Calls on Tate for reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The opposition takes this debate because we've engaged with the team in government on two levels. We've taken them on the idea of the principles. We've said even if the effects of their proposal will manifest, they are still unacceptable within the principle framework that we've talked about. On a second level, this is primarily NC's material, we said even if you want those effects, we accept that we try to achieve them, will it achieve the ends that you would seek, or will it possibly have the opposite effect? And on that basis, I'm going to frame my reply speech on three levels. First, I want to talk to you about how harmful drugs are, because that has been the premise on which they've operated. Then I want to talk about effects on drug usage on society in general, and this whole idea of influence versus what that influence will do. And finally, I want to talk about freedom versus responsibility. On how harmful drugs are. Why did they need to do this? Because they needed to provide a basis for the need. The harm is what drives us to act, and they're driving them to act in this case is to say drugs are fundamentally so bad that we need to do something about it. We said two things. Firstly, we pointed out that the music in and of itself is not fundamentally harmful. You cannot overdose on listening to music about snorting lines of cocaine. Right? But secondly, we said there is still an open debate on drugs. It's not like the harms aren't recognized, but there's an open debate on whether that, and this is my speech, I said it's a legitimate crime that individuals might want to indulge in this, and there are states that allow that usage, even in the case of hard drugs, in the point of shoot-up clinics. So it's not as if, right, we accept universally this is a horrible, harmful thing. There is no way that we can accept anyone possibly attempting to do this. Yes. So that's one level, right? That's one level where we've already come ahead in this debate. But let's talk about second level. Even if we acknowledge it's a harm, even if, right? This is where our second point of engagement between teams comes in, right? And I think this is the effect on drug usage. We think it was a logical leap on their part to go that the music influences people to use drugs. We think at best, and that's what they were trying to really establish is, if they see success, and they didn't say it like this, they see a successful individual. Success being defined by the fact they've won an award. That award and that success results in people going, hey, I can be successful too if I follow that lifestyle choice because they won the awards or because they use drugs. We said that logical leap doesn't actually happen. Individuals, just look at yourselves in real life, guys, right? No one actually does this. And then after, and this is where they really started getting cute, because they started going, but it's not too bad because we're only limiting it in awards, but everyone else can use it in an effort to minimize clash and the burden on their part. part. But that's just it, guys, right? If everyone else can use it, that's where NC's material is particularly pertinent, because this will create isolated groups in society who continue to attach to this idea. In fact, more than anything else, he's right when he points out this makes drug usage a topic that these individuals focus on that artist, because that's why he was denied his award. That's why he wasn't allowed to be there. So we say, even if we're going to talk about the effects they have on their side, we don't think it's going to achieve the end that you're talking about. We say influence is there, but not to the degree you're talking about. Finally, this idea of freedom versus responsibility. And I think this is where our government really fell out of today's debate. Because fundamentally, we established a framework on where these rights happen. The question that I said in my first rebuttal, and NC forcefully put in the first minute of speech, was this: why is an artist responsible for the poor choices of their fans? And till the end of this debate, they haven't provided us. Because make no mistake, Madam Speaker, they admitted it and we pushed it forward. This is an abridgment of the freedom of speech. This is changing an artist from a multi-dimensional character singing about his experiences in life to a one-dimensional character. You are painting a man into a corner and you're shutting him up. And we say they haven't justified to any level at all why someone else's wrong actions, someone else's poor choices should determine what I or you or the artist in general are able to say and sing about. The freedom of speech is paramount, and awards are part of getting recognition. So in conclusion, Madam Speaker, for the freedom, for the effects that will not manifest or get the opposite effect, we are proud to oppose.
Last speaker for this round.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the last time from this side of the house, I'll get straight down to it. I'm going to explain the main thematic clashes and tell you why exactly we win this debate. So, what is it that we need to ask ourselves to decide this debate? Firstly, does the harm from drugs exist? Secondly, is what we are doing the right move to do? And thirdly, will it work, ladies and gentlemen? And I'll tell you why on all three grounds we clearly win the debate. First, ladies and gentlemen, does the harm exist? Tate claims that he came up with his speech where he said that, look, the harm of these drugs is not universally accepted. Well, if he came up with it and the other speakers came up with it, they didn't listen to the first speech, because I said we are only talking about drugs where harm is universally accepted and universally proven. So if there is a drug where the harm is not accepted, we are not talking about it. We are not talking about promoting those drugs, ladies and gentlemen. So yes, the harm does exist. We have proven that to you. Second, ladies and gentlemen, is what we are doing right, ladies and gentlemen? Is what we are doing right? Principally, should we do it then? Well, they said that, look, there's an influence that these people have. We told you that there's an influence that these people have, and there is an obligation on them to use this influence to see to it that they influence the public's choices in a way that is not harmful to the public itself. So they come up and tell you that, look, it's not their fault that public got influenced. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is fine even if it's not their fault. We tell you that, look, the harm to the society cannot be explained. So for instance, Eminem told you to kill your mom, and you killed your mom. We realize that it's not Eminem's fault. That doesn't change the fact that your mom is dead, ladies and gentlemen. And that is what we say. Because we tell you that if people get the harm, then the harm exists, and we need to stop the harm in itself. And the matter of fault is something that can be ignored for the time being, because the harm is far greater, ladies and gentlemen. So yes, principally, we agree. Practical will, ladies and gentlemen, will it affect? And this is where they come up with this entire point about how people actually don't listen to what celebrities say. And secondly, firstly, they say that people actually don't get influenced by celebrities. Secondly, at the same time, they also tell you about how people listen to celebrities so much that people will actually lose, the awards themselves will lose credibility. We think that's a contradiction, because if you're telling us that celebrities are influential, you can't tell us that, at the same time, you can't tell us that, look, I listen to celebrities, but I'm not influenced by them. This is a contradiction. Furthermore, we also tell you, and this is something we said in the second and the whip speech too, that look, ladies and gentlemen, even if a law exists, even if people get rebellious because celebrities told them to do something and authorities were against it, we also told you that still, ladies and gentlemen, that is not reason enough for you to remove the law. Because look, when Bob Marley was taking drugs, a lot of people thought that taking drugs was cool. A lot of people thought that the government was doing something wrong by arresting Bob Marley for taking drugs. That doesn't mean that we remove the law itself, ladies and gentlemen, because the harm is much, much greater, ladies and gentlemen. Lastly, there were certain clashes on the momentum and on the kind of message that we're sending. So we told you, and this is in the second speech that we told you, that there is a cascade effect that's going to lead. The cascade effect simply being that now it will create a momentum, that will create an acceptability that taking drugs is okay and is cool because celebrities are saying so. And we were consistent in telling the celebrities are very, very influential, something that they haven't clashed with. We also told you about economic benefits, something again that they haven't clashed with. So, and ladies and gentlemen, lastly, we also said that this is not about curtailing your right to expression in absolute, because we told you that no right is absolute, particularly when your expression can lead to certain harms which are very, very bad, which have a larger social concern, which will become a concern for the government. We told you that it's fair for us to restrict certain parts of your right to expression. It's fair for us to restrict that part of your right to expression that promotes actions that could lead to this harm. And ladies and gentlemen, on all those points, we tell you that we have clearly won this debate, ladies and gentlemen, and we also tell you that there are certain contradictions, ladies and gentlemen, on their side. And lastly, to conclude, let me just point once more back to the hippie movement and tell you that look, a lot of people in the United States, and nothing that they say can change the fact, and nothing that they say can prove it to us that the harm doesn't exist, because we told you that a lot of people in the US and in the 1960s, the entire movement drugs started being taken because Bob Marley was recognized as an artist, and Bob Marley was also recognized as the person who took drugs, ladies and gentlemen, and that is why the harm exists, and that is why we clearly win this debate, ladies and gentlemen.